Greetings. Welcome to the fiscal year 2024 Michigan Department of Education Section 31A Annual Program and Fiscal Report recorded webinar. This webinar will go over an overview of the Section 31A APFR that can be found in Nexus and that is due annually on July 15th. Let's take a look at the agenda and outcomes of this webinar. During this presentation, the Section 31A consultant team will provide a detailed walkthrough of the purpose of the Section 31A grant, the end of the year report, a short overview of the Nexus platform, and the step-by-step directions to successfully complete the Section 31A APFR. If you have specific questions relating to the current APFR or previous year reports, you are going to contact Mrs. Judy Thalen, our OES Nexus Analyst in the Office of Educational Support's Special Populations. We also have our Unit Manager, Mrs. Michelle Williams, and you also should contact your designated single point of contact program consultant, which will include myself, Don Carmody, and Mrs. Suzanne Grambush. We are all happy to assist you regarding your Section 31A technical assistance needs. Just as a review, remember the Section 31A at-risk grant is a categorical grant, meaning that it provides additional supplemental funds for targeted support to eligible students to achieve proficiency in ELA by 3rd grade, proficiency in math by the end of 8th grade, and career and college readiness by the end of high school. College and career proficiency is measured in 11th grade by the SAT assessment to ensure that students have the necessary skills for continuing their education or joining the workforce. In addition to the academic achievement outcomes, Section 31A Intent and Purposes also focuses on students attending school regularly to ensure they engage in educational opportunities. Much of the APFR has not changed from last year, but there are a couple important reminders when using Nexus. All Nexus users must have a Michigan Login account or MyLogin. On this slide, you will see a link for a resource that may help your team create MyLogin accounts. An important consideration is that a Level 4 user must be assigned to the Section 31A report by a Level 5 authorized official. The second link on the slide is an easy checklist of how your Level 5 authorized official can assign applications or reports to Level 4 authorized users. If this is your first time using Nexus, there's new terminology used as compared to MEX Plus in previous years. This new vocabulary aligns to other state systems such as the Education Entity Master or EEM and Sigma. Some examples of this are the term agency refers to districts, while in Nexus you will see the term organization and entity. Another example is instead of the term grant, you will see the term program used like program name or program number. When you log into your My Login screen, after you have acknowledged the pop-ups, the first screen you will see is your dashboard. On the dashboard, you will see 3 widgets or panels including My Tasks, My Opportunities, and Announcements. My Task is your to-do list. These are the applications or reports that have been initiated or assigned. My Opportunities are the programs formerly called grants that are available for your organization or district. This is a list of application reports available. Some are required, while others may be competitive or optional for your district. Announcements is a panel where MDE and the Nexus platform can send a variety of updates or announcements. This feature in Nexus was not available in MEX Plus. When you choose the Section 31A APFR from your My Task panel on your dashboard, your second screen will be the report on the screenshot shown here. Let's do a quick overview of some of the features of this report. First, there's the tabs bar. This is the blue bar across the top of the report. It will be accessible from anywhere in the Nexus platform. On the far left, you will see the Home button, which takes you back to the Nexus dashboard. Administration, which will allow users administrative functions for their district, and Searches, which allows overall function within Nexus and especially to search different applications and reports. On the far right of the tab's blue bar, you will see some icons. This includes the half circle, which means the theme setting of the application can switch. This button switches between the visible settings from black to white. There's also a book icon, which is where you can access the Nexus Platform's manual. Lastly, on the tabs bar to the far right will be the user's name. This allows you to access the user profile, messages, edit the dashboard, and access a logout link. Next, let's look at the report number. The report or application number will share some important information regarding the task you're in. The first part of the code describes the application or report. So in this case, you will see the number 31A is identified since this is the Section 31A APFR. Then it shows the fiscal year and the district code. When hovering over this ID, you will see the application or report name, the current status of the task, your role in the district, and the due date. If you click on the report number, it will take you back to the landing page or document overview from anywhere in the report. Next, let's look at the navigation form slide menu. For this demo, we have collapsed the forms headings in the form slide menu to ensure that you can see them all in the screenshot. Be aware that when you enter the report, they will most likely be expanded. The navigation slide menu is a navigation tool with links that will allow you to go from one form to the next within the task. Please be aware that if you utilize the navigation slide menu, you're going to want to utilize the Save button in the top right-hand corner of each form or screen. Next, we have the main screen. This is the portion of the screen that will display each new form as you navigate through the reports or applications. Up in the right-hand corner of the main screen is the Additional Tools button. These additional tools can be found in the top right-hand corner of the main screen, just below the username in a green banner. Depending on the form or screen that you're on, you may see additional tools including New Note, Save, Add, or Delete. Now let's take a closer look at the Section 31A navigation slide menu. When you expand the navigation slide menu, it has a long list of forms or screens that will be displayed. These screens are broken up into sections. Let's look at the first three sections on the left side of the slide. The first section in the Section 31 APFR is called Forms. There are 4 forms or screens under the Forms section of the report. The first 3 screens or forms are required by all districts. They include cover page, important information, assurances, and certifications. The last link in the form section is the help guide. All districts are recommended to download this help guide to ensure that you complete a report in a timely and accurate manner. The section subsection is called Program Information. These are the forms for the Section 31A APFR that will describe how the district spent this grant during the current grant cycle, including the school year and summer programming. We will look at these forms in detail, step by step. The third subsection of the navigation slide menu is called Attachments. There's one form in this subsection called Miscellaneous Attachments. This is an optional section and is provided in cases where districts may need to upload any supporting documentation requested by a consultant. Now let's look at the middle screenshot. In the next section of the navigation slide menu is Tools. This section has a variety of tools available to the report. The first tool is the Document Framework. The document framework is a landing page. This will take you to the report status timeline and the original screen you saw when you first entered the report. The second tool is the Add or Edit People tool, where the report can be assigned to other users in the district or organization. This tool will be necessary for authorized official level 5 to assign the APFR to a level 4. Until an authorized official assigns the authorized user the task, the user will not have access to the Save button or be able to save the entered data in the fiscal year 23-24 report. The next 3 tools include the document status history, document attachment repository, and document modification summary. These tools are not used frequently while completing your report during the end of the year and not an application that requires multiple modifications. These are general Nexus tools, which is why it's part of the navigation slide menu in the APFR. These may be useful tools to a district to request to amend a report for accurateness in September after final summary expenditures have been determined or if modifications are needed. Next in the Tools section is the Document Validation link. This could be used before you hit Submit on your application or your report to determine if there's any global errors that need to be fixed before you can submit. The last 3 tools are Notes Form, the print document, and the document messages. The Notes tool is a summary of all the notes that have been written in report on any screen or form. The notes are like the form of review comments in MEGS Plus. The print document is available to print the entire report from one screen. A hint is only to print a form or screen or 2 at a time. It is not recommended to click all the radio dial buttons and hit print, as this will take many minutes to download into a PDF. The last tool is the document messages, and this will be any messages that are sent through Nexus system. When we look to the far right of the slide, we see the last 2 sections of the navigation slide menu, status options, and related documents. First are the status options. In this section of the slide menu, the user completing a report will see all the available options to change the status of the report. Some status change options may include submit, cancel, or modify. So in this screen, you will see the options that are available is submitting the report to MDE or canceling the report, which will delete it out of Nexus. The reason these 2 options are available is due to the current status of the report being an application in progress. The last section of the menu is related documents. For the APFR, this section has no action required and is not used in the end of the year report. Related documents is a general Nexus heading, and in other OES applications, such as consolidated application or Section 41 application, this function may be utilized. Here are some key reminders to keep in mind as you work in Nexus on the Section 31A APFR. First, there are 2 different user levels. There's an authorized official level 5 and authorized user level 4. Authorized officials need to initiate the report, and if they would like an authorized user, a level 4, to finish the report, you need to assign it to that person by using the Add to Edit button. Hovering over the report's ID will let you see the current status of your report and your role in the district. Remember to hit Save each time you finish the screen before progressing to the next page. Districts will want to consider bringing together a team including representatives from your program office, business office, and nutrition services office. Important documents to reference include your continuous improvement plans, end of the year Section 31A expenditure reports, program planning information including program costs, estimated summer program costs, grade level served, and student count served. When reporting the number of students who were served and who benefited from Section 31A, utilizing the funds, you report the total student count served, as well as the number of students within the count who were eligible for free and reduced price meals. In most cases, these numbers will not be the same, as there will be at-risk eligible students served or impacted who qualify in areas other than the eligibility for free and reduced price meals. The Form section of the navigation slide menu is the district's cover page. The cover page populates with information from the EEM and lists your district's name and address. There are fields for you to select the main contact rep as well as the secondary contact person from your district. Select these names from a drop-down list populated from users you have added in Nexus. Once you have ensured this information is accurate, you can click Save in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. When you select your contacts, if their contact information is not accurate in the cover page, they should update their My Login profile. The next 3 forms or screens are important information, assurances, and certifications, and the help guide. Here you will find information about the use of the report, a section-by-section breakdown, submission requirements, and MDE contact information, general grant information. Districts are required to review this information prior to submission. The help guide is highly recommended to be printed out prior to filling out the report so you can refer to it while completing the different screens. After reading each screen, you will see a check will be added to the square next to the form name. This will indicate that the form is completed and has no errors. If you see an exclamation point in that box, this means that there is an error on that form that needs to be fixed before the report can be submitted. This is the help guide. It provides step-by-step directions on how to complete all 4 sections. It's a document that can be easily downloaded and printed. When you click on the form button, it will download into your web browser's download file. Let's dive into what each section is about in the APFR and the help guide. The APFR and the help guide are arranged in 4 sections to reflect the divisions of the report. Section 1 contains the LEA compiled report, which includes Section 31A carryover and current year expenditures, the populated calculations, and Part C is where LEAs will indicate if they've used school-wide reform. Section 2 is where districts list direct instructional supports, secondary program expenditures, and direct instructional supports provided during the day, after school, and extended school year opportunities. This is also where districts will answer 2 questions regarding implementation of MTSS. In Section 3 is direct non-instructional supports, including social, emotional, and health-related supports, as well as funding to support professional learning and parent-family community engagement. And lastly, Section 4 is for reporting expenditures on school breakfast programs. Before we begin the directions for completion, keep in mind the APFR Help Guide will assist you along the way. As a reminder, Section 31A is a state aid grant designated for the current state fiscal year. The State School Aid Act allocates funds to be spent during the current allocation year. Funds not spent during the allocation year may be carried over and will be available to be spent during the following grant year. Any funds not spent in the immediate following year would then be forfeited. Similar to federal funding, the state funding follows the first in, first out rule. To illustrate, if during the 22-23 school year an LEA had Section 31A carryover from school year 22, these funds would be expended first before the new allocation would be spent. It is important that business offices and program offices have written procedures that align to various accounting and programming requirements for accurate accounting and program planning. For the purpose of end-of-year reporting on the APFR, districts should report Section 31A expenditures for the current school year and any funds to be expended for at-risk summer programming that current year's grant will fund. Because the APFR is due on July 15, 2024, as required by state legislation, and summer programming will likely extend beyond its due date, it is important to estimate the report's anticipated costs. Any funds not expended by the end of the district summer programming, generally August 31st, will become carryover for 24-25 school year. Since Section 31A expenditures are reported after planning and not submitted as an application, there is no formal amendment period for Section 31A APFR. Since summer expenditures are estimates, LEAs are encouraged to reach out to your 31A spot consultant or your general mailbox if modifications are needed due to changes in summer programming estimates versus actual expenditures. Often, districts will reach out to our consultant team in September to modify their current report, which will help ensure that the next reporting cycle is accurate.
Let's jump into the specific Section 31A Annual Program and Fiscal Report forms. On the far left side of your Nexus screen, on the navigation slide menu, you will see we are jumping into the next section of forms as identified by the blue and white subheading called Program Information. The first form in this section is Section 1, District Compiled Report. Section 1 includes 3 parts, Part A, B, and C. We will take a look at each part. When clicking on the Section 1 District Compiled Report form on the navigation slide menu, your main screen will look like the screenshot on this slide. Let's take a look at Section 1, Part A. Part A contains 2 years of an at-a-glance fiscal information at the district level. This section includes the prior Section 31A grant information, which focuses on the current grant cycle's carryover, the current year allocation, and the total amount spent by the district during the grant cycle. In Table 1, the fields are populated to display the previous year's final allocation. The allocation amounts previously spent, as reported on last year's report, and the calculated carryover amount. Due to these numbers being populated from the previous year's Section 31A APFR, if you need to make changes to expenditures from fiscal year 2023 due to the current populated amounts being inaccurate, you need to notify the Section 31A team by reaching out to your district's Section 31A single point of contact consultant and Mrs. Judy Thalen from the Office of Educational Support's Financial Unit to make the necessary adjustments. If adjustments are needed on the previous report to ensure the fiscal data is accurate, the updates on the previous report must be done before completing the current report. In Table 1, the only reporting that a district needs to complete is row 4, the carryover spent during the current grant cycle. As explained earlier, the State School Aid Act states in Section 18A that all funds appropriated under this law needs to be spent within 1 year of receiving the grant, unless otherwise specified in the grant. This 1 year of carryover section of the law applies to the Section 31A at-risk grant. The grant is allocated by the Michigan Legislature to implement programming that supports students during the intended grant cycle or school year. Therefore, Table 1, Row 4 entered text box should equal Table 1, Row 3, total carryover available. If a district did not meet the first in and first out rule and tries to enter a lower amount in Row 4, an error will appear. If your district finds that this is the case for your district, please contact your Section 31A consultant to determine how to remedy the issue and submit the report. If 100% of carryover funds are not going to be spent in the allowable timeline, then returning of funds or a prior year adjustment may be necessary. In Table 2, the fiscal information reported is related to the current grant amount spent. In this table, the estimated Section 31A allocation from April is displayed in Row 1. Remember that Section 31A at-risk grant is an estimate until the last payment is paid to districts in August due to the proration clause in the law. In rare occasions, the final grant may be larger than listed on this report. Changes to the Section 31A grant after March are rare. But I wanted to mention this to you to see, as you may see, a different amount on the following year's report, which may cause the district to have additional carryover. In Table 2, the district will complete Table 2, Row 2, to report how much of the current grant was and will be spent during the grant performance period of the school year and summer programming. This reported amount may be an estimated amount due to any Section 31A funded summer programming and support still being in progress when the report is due on July 15th. In Table 3, the amount of the total Section 31A grant funds spent by the district during the current grant cycle will be calculated by adding the two text box totals. This includes carryover and current allocation spent that was entered in Table 1 and Table 2. Lastly, in Part A, you will enter the number of schools in your district that utilized Section 31A funding during the grant cycle in the text box below Table 3. As a final reminder for Part A, districts should make sure the information reported is accurate due to the fiscal amounts being used for future reports. Due to this being an end-of-the-year report and not an application, there is no formal amendment window. If districts have changes in their Section 31A report after actual summer expenditures have been finalized, leaders are encouraged to send an email to the Section 31A consultant or the Section 31A general mailbox to request to modify their APFR in September to make sure that accurate data is populated in the next report. Section 1, Part B. In this part of the form, lines 1 through 7 will initially be 0, as they will be populated as the reporter completes the other Nexus forms called Section 2, Instructional Supports, Section 3, Direct Non-Instructional Supports, and Section 4, School Breakfast Program Supplement. Once the other forms are completed and saved, then these lines 1 through 7 in Section 1 District Compiled Report Part B will populate. The reporter will need to complete line 8 by entering the total number of unduplicated at-risk pupils served. Unduplicated head count means that each student served or benefited from the Section 31A funded supports and services in the districts during the grant performance period is counted only once during the fiscal year. This is regardless of the number of services that the student may have been provided. As an example, let's say that you have a building that funds during the day reading intervention teacher who has a caseload of students, a summer school program, and a social worker with the Section 31A grant. And student A participates in all of those services. So on this first section, for student A, they would only be counted once. But throughout the rest of the report, they could be counted multiple times, and therefore Section 2, 3, and 4 may be duplicated in multiple categories. Section 1, Part B, line 8 really is looking at the student's unique identification code, or UIC level. This text box is answering the question, how many students in your district received at least one Section 31A funded service during this grant period? And an important note to know about Section 1, Part B and Section 1, Part A is that line 7 in Part B should be equal to Table 3 in Section 1, Part A. Due to lines 1 through 6 not populating until the whole report is complete and each form is saved, there will be an error that appears on this form. It will say that Part A and Part B totals should match, and they are not. Don't worry, just complete the rest of the forms, and prior to submitting, return to this form and resave the page. Resaving the page will have the lines 1 through 6 populate. Section 1, Part C relates to school-wide reform. Districts may use the Section 31A grant for school-wide reform strategies and efforts if they meet the legislative criteria. The school-wide reform criteria includes that school buildings have 40% or more of students within that building that are determined to be at-risk eligible based on the criteria defined in law, and that the reform strategies must utilize evidence-based practices, be guided by their needs assessment, and included in the district and building improvement plans, and must include parent and family engagement components. Determinations of using school-wide reform strategies should be made through team-based decision-making and ongoing evaluation of needs and program effectiveness. If districts utilize the Section 31A school-wide reform provision during this reporting period, first check the checkbox that indicates, yes, the LEA utilized school-wide reform, and add an amount spent on the school-wide reform efforts into the text box. Additionally, at least one best practice or strategy type must be chosen to define the category of the school-wide reform that was used. If your district did not use Section 31A funds to implement a school-wide reform strategy, then Part C can be skipped. As shared earlier, after completing all of the Section 1 form, you will have to click Save, but you will still receive an attention or error message for this form the first time through. The error will read, grand total Section 31A spent in 2023-24, Part A, Table 3, Row 1, must equal total amount spent for programs and supports, Part B, Row 7. What this is telling you is that when you complete and save the next three forms, Sections 2 through 4 with the itemized Section 31A funded supports and services, and then come back to save the Section 1 form again, your itemized expenditure should align to your overall spent funds reported in the initial fiscal table. Now we move on to Section 2, Direct Instructional Supports, Pre-Kindergarten, and My MTSS Narrative Response Questions. In Section 2, Part A, this is where the district will report the instructional supports that were provided to at-risk eligible students. This includes supports provided for secondary program planning, instructional supports or MTSS K-12, and intervention supports including during the day, after school, and during extended school year programming. Section 2, Part B is where districts will report pre-kindergarten supplemental supports for added needs. Section 2, Part C is where districts will respond to the questions about their multi-tiered system of supports. Note that this year we have added a question about EWIMS, or Early Warning, Intervention, and Monitoring Systems, enacted as MTSS at the secondary level. Let's take a look closer at the Section 2 form, and we'll start with Table 1, Step 1, related to Secondary Program Planning, Supports and Services. Section 2, Part A, Instructional Supports Table. The first table in Section 2, Part A, includes categories related to programming for at-risk eligible students in grades 9 through 12, or secondary program planning. The district will report direct instructional supports for secondary programming here first. The program categories have not changed from previous years and reflect allowances for supplemental secondary expenditures of the Section 31A grant. In columns A through C, report the actual grade level served, the total number of at-risk eligible pupils served, and the number of students from the total served who were eligible for free and reduced price meals. In column D, report the amount of Section 31A funding that was spent in each of these designations. If your district did not use Section 31A funding for these categories, leave those columns blank. Let's glance at some helpful hints for reporting in the Secondary Program Planning section. This information is also located in the Help Guide document for your reference. The Help Guide includes the information that we are sharing today, as well as more detailed information to help answer any questions you may have as you complete the report. Remember, you can download a PDF copy of the Help Guide from within the application in Nexus. On page 2 through 4 of the Help Guide, there is more specific information about completing Section 2, and it It includes examples and answers to commonly asked questions. In Section 2, districts will report all supplemental allowable costs related to specifically secondary programming, such as staffing, materials, transportation, and allowable tuition costs and fees. There are 9 APFR secondary program planning areas listed on the table on the far right side of this slide, which include International Baccalaureate, Advanced Placement coursework, English Learner Service programs, Credit Recovery, Career and Technical Coursework supports, Dual Enrollment programs, Alternative Education Supplemental supports, SAT Prep coursework, and GED coursework. Any cost related to programming provided in grades 9 through 12 that has been reported in this part of the APFR table should not be included in any other section of the APFR, as no expenditures should be duplicated. If you or your district has secondary program planning context-specific questions, please feel free to contact your Section 31A single point of contact. Now we'll take a look at the next part of Section 2, Table 1, called Instructional Supports or MTSS K-12. This information is also on page 3 of the Help Guide. This is the area to report expenditures for instructional and behavioral coaches, MTSS coaches or coordinators, any supplemental K-12 core content area teacher, instructional materials purchased with Section 31A funds, excluding those that were already reported in the secondary 9th through 12th grades part, academic paraprofessionals, behavioral paraprofessionals, and behavior interventionists, certified or licensed. As before, columns A through C report the actual level served, grade level served, the total number of at-risk eligible pupils served, and the number of students served who were eligible for free and reduced price meals, which is a subset of that original at-risk eligible pupil served number. In column D, report the amount of Section 31A funds that were spent on these services. If funding was not spent in an area designated in this section, leave all of those rows blank. The next slide will provide some helpful hints on completing this section of the report. We are still on Part 2, Instructional Supports or MTSS reporting. This slide shows us what is reported here and what is not. In this part of Table 1, districts will report instructional supports including staffing related to MTSS, supplemental content area teaching staff, such as a co-teacher, paraprofessionals related to academics and behavior, instructional materials that were not already reported under secondary programming. The table on the far right lists the allowable direct instructional support categories for this section. One point of clarification that has been a frequently asked question for our team the past couple of years is the category about the behavioral interventionist, certified or licensed. An interventionist would be a person with a Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science degree, someone with an additional certification, and specialized background knowledge in a specific area to support Tier 2 and Tier 3 intervention supports. Some specific areas of specialized training may include behavior or academics like reading or mathematics. A paraprofessional, on the other hand, would be a person who may not necessarily have a degree or certification, but is qualified to support in classrooms academically or behaviorally. In order to meet other qualifications, these paraprofessional staff may have 60 or more credit hours or have passed the State Board of Education approved assessments with their above the identified thresholds. Current approved paraprofessional tests or assessments include the College Board SAT or the ETS Parapro Assessment. On our Section 31A report, Behavior Interventionist Certified or Licensed category would be a certified personnel having a degree with credentials or a background in functional behavior assessments and other experiences and skills related to the Positive Behavior and Intervention System Implementation, or PBIS. If your district has context-specific questions, please reach out by phone or email to your Section 31A single point of contact. We have moved on to parts 3 and 4 in our Section 2, Table 1, Intervention Supports during the day, after school, and extended school year. In these parts of the table, districts will report certified teachers that provided intervention or tutoring in the areas of reading, writing, math, social studies, or science that are funded with Section 31A funds. Additionally, paraprofessionals or interventionists providing supplemental English learner program services to English learner students in grades K through 8 will also be reported in these parts. As before, columns A through C report the actual grade level served, the total number of at-risk eligible pupils served, and the subset number of students who were also eligible for free or reduced price meals who received services. And in column D is where you will report the amount of Section 31A funds that were spent on these services. If the district did not use any Section 31A funding for these categories, leave all columns blank for each category that is not funded. Remember, avoid duplication for any services and supports that were already reported in earlier sections of the table. For instance, academic and behavioral paraprofessionals were reported previously in Section 2, Part 2, Direct Instructional Supports, or MTSS K-12. This is also true for instructional materials related to interventions were already reported in the previous section. And a final reminder is that supports for English learners in grades 9 through 12 was reported earlier under the secondary program planning part. Let's take a look at the helpful hints for completing this section. One more update in part 4 before we get to those helpful hints. New this year in the 2023-2024 annual program and fiscal report, we have added an additional category for reporting allowable supplemental transportation expenses for after-school and extended school year supports and services. This would include any transportation costs funded with the Section 31A grant to support the implementation of before or after school extended day programming, as well as any extended year educational programming such as summer school and intersession programming that may occur during district breaks like winter or spring. Let's review this slide for some helpful reminders about Section 2, Table 1, Parts 3 and 4, Intervention Supports during the day, extended day, and extended school year. The left column of the first table reiterates that what we discussed on the previous slide as to what will be reported under this intervention supports categories, including academic interventionists, K-8 English learner staff, including interventionists and paraprofessionals, and transportation costs for the extended day and school year programming. The center column indicates what you will not be reported in this section, which focuses on the previously reported instructional supports. The table on the far right lists the allowable support categories for Part 3 and 4. Section 2, Part B is for districts who use the Section 31A grant to support added needs for their pre-kindergarten programs. A few years ago, a new provision was added to the Section 31A law that allows districts to use 10% of their grant to supplement their pre-kindergarten programs. If districts use Section 31A funding for pre-K during the current grant cycle, they must complete Section 2, Part B. If districts did not provide supplementary services and supports for their pre-kindergarten during the 2023-2024 school year, then this part may be skipped. Districts that must complete Section 2, Part B must first check the box that states, yes, the LEA utilized funding for pre-kindergarten. Then, at least one row or category must have all columns A through C filled in to show how the funding was used. There are 7 categories of expenditures in which pre-kindergarten expenses may be reported under. Let's look at the next slide for those categories and some other useful information. The 7 pre-kindergarten categories are additional seats, transportation costs for eligible students, professional learning, MTSS or PBIS program coaches, supplemental English learner program services and materials, social emotional learning or SEL supplementary supports, and supplementary materials. For the category professional learning, there are limitations of the topics that can be covered, just as there is for the K-12 instructional staff and administrators in Section 31A law. The professional learning topics must be related to implementing a coaching model, MTSS with fidelity, and the Read by Grade 3 law. Since this pre-kindergarten Section 31A provision has been around just a couple of years, districts are welcome to reach out to their Section 31A single point of contact consultant as a thought partner. All supplemental pre-kindergarten supports funded with the Section 31A grant must be to provide evidence-based instructional and non-instructional services to at-risk eligible pre-kindergarten pupils as defined in the law. Additionally, if you have any specific questions regarding the Michigan Great Start Readiness Program, or GSRP, foundational requirements, please contact Michelle McManus in MyLeap's Office of Early Education. Questions about the supplemental allowability for funding with Section 31A should be directed to your Section 31A single point of contact.
Now we will move on to the final part of Section 2. It includes 4 questions regarding the LEA's implementation of a multi-tiered system of support, or MTSS. The questions are designed to gather responses that reflect the district's implementation, support of, and ongoing refinement of their tiered delivery framework. In the first 2 questions, the MDE is asking for specific information regarding who provides the district with professional learning or technical assistance related to MTSS, as well as the specific fidelity measures or tools used within schools to measure the fidelity of MTSS implementation. There are also 2 questions that ask districts to share which components of MTSS they might be interested in receiving additional professional learning or technical assistance. And new this year, a question about implementation of EWIMS, the Early Warning Intervention and Monitoring System, which is a tiered delivery of services and supports at the secondary level. We'll talk a little more about each of these questions later in the presentation. The MTSS narrative question 1 asks, during the 2023-24 school year, list who provided the LEA with professional learning and/or technical assistance to support pre-K-12 MTSS implementation. Question 1 is asking for specific information about who is providing the professional learning and technical assistance that is directly related to continuous improvement and the multi-tiered system of support. Who is providing expertise and working toward full implementation of the components of MTSS? Who is supporting staff in understanding and applying strategies to implement with fidelity? What new learning is taking place to plan for ongoing improvement? Sources of support may include the ISD or RISA, the My MTSS TA Center, or a private vendor, just to name a few. If you respond with the name of an ISD or an individual, we ask that you include the role of the individual and the type and topic of training. It's important to note that answers like "not applicable" are red flags since the implementation of MTSS is legislatively required for all districts who receive Section 31A funding. We understand that all LEAs are on their own path toward full implementation, but answers such as "not applicable" could be interpreted as an LEA not meeting the assurances required to receive Section 31A funding. These two questions require a response and may not be left blank. If assistance or clarification is needed, please contact your Section 31A point of contact. Here are examples of what would represent appropriate responses for question 1. The first example shows a list of personnel who provided the professional learning, followed by a list of topics covered. Keep the response simple by providing a list. Similarly, the next example indicates the name of the ISD and the professional learning provided aligned with the needs and implementation of tiered support. The final example demonstrates how a district may respond to indicate their plan moving forward if professional learning or technical assistance has not yet been put in place. This slide shows some non-examples of responses to question 1. These responses would not be appropriate. "Not at this time" or "NA" are not acceptable responses. Generic descriptions that do not provide specific information about the source of professional learning and the subject matter aligned to ongoing improvements in implementation of a multi-tiered system of support are also not appropriate. Question 2 asks LEAs to list the tool or tools the district is using to measure the implementation of MTSS as intended. The question is asking for specific information regarding the fidelity measures being used in schools to measure the effectiveness of the implementation of the key components of MTSS. It asks what tool the district is using to examine and reflect on how successfully they are meeting those key components. A fidelity measure will show where the LEA is in the continuum of full implementation. Fidelity tools are used to keep track of which features are in place and to what extent. These may include a tiered fidelity inventory, a district-generated rubric, a detailed strategy implementation guide, or an MTSS self-reflection tool, among others. And examples of what would represent appropriate responses for question 2. The first example is a list of the fidelity measures that a school may be using. Please keep the response simple by providing a list of information. The second example demonstrates how a district may respond to indicate their plan moving forward if a fidelity measure is not yet in place. New this year is a question asking districts if they are currently implementing the Early Warning Intervention and Monitoring System, or EWIMS, to enact MTSS at the secondary level. These responses help drive upcoming professional learning, technical assistance, and collaboration. And again, a response is required to move on to the next section of the report. The final two questions related to MTSS ask districts to share areas they would like further guidance and resources. The first new question asks, of the 5 components of MTSS, in what areas would the district benefit from further guidance and resources? Districts are invited to check all that imply. The second question asks, at which levels additional guidance and resources might be helpful, elementary, middle, or high school? And again, districts may choose all that apply. Our team will use this information to plan upcoming technical assistance and professional learning opportunities. Now we move on to Section 3, Direct Non-Instructional Supports. This section has 3 parts, A, B, and C. In Part A, LEAs list expenditures for school health clinics, medical services, mental health services, counseling, social workers, and activities to reduce chronic absenteeism. Districts report those services that were funded with Section 31A. It's important to note that infrastructure costs are not allowable. As before, in columns A through C, report the actual grade levels served, the total number of at-risk eligible pupils served, and the number of students served in this category who were eligible for free or reduced priced meals. In column D, report the amount of Section 31A funding spent on each of these services for at-risk eligible students. If the LEA did not use Section 31A funding for these categories, please leave all columns blank. Section 3, Part B is Other Supports. The Help Guide has additional information to assist in completing this section. Districts begin by indicating if 50% or more of their students are eligible for free or reduced priced meals. Please choose the radio button to indicate either yes or no. For districts who qualify, funds may be used to support a school parent liaison or may be used for school security. And again, that is for those districts with 50% or more students who are eligible for free or reduced priced meals. Also, crisis intervention and anti-bullying programming expenses can be reported here, as well as parent, family, and community engagement expenditures. In Part C, report Section 31A spending for professional learning related to your multi-tiered system of support, implementation of a coaching model that supports a tiered delivery framework, and professional learning related to the Read by Grade 3 law. Include the grade levels impacted by this professional learning and the amount of 31A funding spent in each category. As a reminder, there is no longer a cap on professional learning expenditures with Section 31A. In the final portion of the report, Section 4, LEAs report on the allocation for the school breakfast program. Page 5 in the Help Guide provides additional information to complete this section. All LEAs must complete Section 4. The first item asks districts to indicate if they are exempt and do not provide school breakfasts. For those few LEAs, you will check the box to indicate exemption. If you have questions about your district status, please contact the Office of Health and Nutrition Services. Also on this page, the number of students eligible for free and reduced price meals will be pre-populated based on the previous year's fall count. LEAs enter the amount per student they choose to expend to support the school breakfast program. Districts can allocate any amount between 1 cent to $10 per student. The total amount will calculate based on the number of eligible students, so the designated amount times the number of students eligible for free or reduced priced meals. If you would like specific information related to your student count for this section, it's available on the MDE program allocation website in the same location you find the federal title allocations. For districts designated as Community Eligibility Provision or CEP, and districts that have alternative agreements with other districts to operate their nutrition programs and grants, These districts are also required to support their school breakfast program by designating an amount between 1 cent and $10 per student who has been designated as economically disadvantaged. We encourage LEAs to consult with the Office of Health and Nutrition Services for ideas on how to enrich the school breakfast program through the use of Section 31A funding. After completing Sections 2, 3, and 4, it's time to navigate back to Section 1, the District Compiled Report. In Section 1, review the total in Part A, Table 3. That's the current year grand total spent, the total of the carryover together with the current year's allocation spent. This total should match the total in Part B, the total amount spent for programs and supports. That match indicates the itemized services and supports align to the total grant spent, and you're ready to save Section 1. Once saved, use the slide menu to the left and scroll down to Status Options. Within Status Options, click Submit Report. Once you click, you'll receive a pop-up screen with either a confirmation message to confirm you want to submit the report. If you're ready to submit, click OK, and the APFR will be submitted. Or you may receive an attention message. If an attention message pops up, there will be a link to the form that contains errors. Be aware, if there are errors in any of the sections, the icon next to the form name on the form slide menu will have an exclamation point rather than a check. Please address any errors and then submit the report by choosing Submit Report. And with that, your APFR is complete. We thank you for joining us and invite you to reach out with any additional questions you might have. If you have questions related to allocations or your pre-populated data, you may contact analyst Judy Thalen. Have a wonderful rest of your day.